Welcome, beautiful people, to the Soul Ashraya podcast, a weekly bhakti podcast. We will seek the shelter and wisdom of our dear Lord Krishna with Shastra, prayer, and conversation. I am your host, Bhakti Jake. I have my friend with me, friend and teacher. His name is Balaram Shakti Das. He's got the Shakti, he's got the Das. And we are going to be talking about his brand new haircut, which looks very nice.
No, we're not.
No, we're not. We are going to be getting into the Krishna book. We have had some special guests and some special episodes, and now we will return to the Shastra, return to the written word given to us through ages and ages of wisdom. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for our live audience, which is here also. And thank you, Balaram, for being here. Do you want to just get right into it and say the...
Yeah, let's just dive right in.
Yeah, let's do
We
that.
can
Okay.
pull up our
Yeah, let me
prayers.
bring up the prayers for everyone to read along with. Screen sharing them. Oh, wow. Look at that. That is fantastic. It looks like everything kind of froze for a
So the
second.
first one,
It's okay.
yeah,
Go ahead. Go
it's
ahead.
okay. We made it. The first one isn't on there, but it's a call and response, and then the rest are chanted together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyade Shatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Okay. So we are in here, I'll bring it up where we're at in the Krishna book if you want to just talk about something while I'm bringing it up right now. Yes.
All right. Well, we had some super lively conversation last night. I guess I haven't told you. It's been really interesting. And well, I guess, yeah, I mentioned last week that one of the guys was wanting to come to the Saturday program here. So that's really exciting. And we'll see. There's now 3 of them, including my instructor and including one of these guys' brother, Um, his brother is like super into spirituality, but literally knows nobody,
Mm.
who he can talk to it about. Like he's just like the only person in his family who believes in God, except for his brother who's in my class. Um, and like as soon as he saw me, like he didn't even need to talk to me. He was like told her, he's like, I just met this guy today in my class. Like he's really cool. Like I gotta introduce you to him. He's really spiritual. But yeah, we've been talking like every day
Awesome.
this week. It's been really amazing, even to the point of the instructor is now like open in class, like not privately, like openly talking to me and asking me about, spiritual subject matter, Christian consciousness. Uh, and so the last couple days, like last night, we didn't even do anything. Like we literally, like it was storming, and he was just like, we just talked all night.
Mm.
It was great.
Nice.
It's like the end of the night. Um, the a lot of topics got brought up. They're just like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And brought up the flat Earth theory.
Wow, interesting.
I don't know if we can get into that. It's interesting. It's I'm not learned enough to be able to
Flat
speak
Earth. The flat
comprehensively.
Earth is so interesting because first of all, that the second you say anything about it, you're like, burn,
Yup,
put in a box.
yup.
You just bring it up in a
So
conversation, and
I
then
didn't even
all of
bring it
a
up.
sudden, oh, we got a weirdo.
We got one of them over here. Okay,
Aliens.
yeah, you just
They
walk
see
over the
that.
side and fall right off, right? Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Just completely shut it.
seriously, seriously. Yeah,
But I mean, the people they burned people at the stake who thought the Earth was round a number of years ago, like not too distant past.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it is interesting. If nothing else, it's interesting just to observe. Just
well, just to not be closed to any possibilities, like to at least I'm going to be open to hearing arguments, like hearing data and evidence and this and that, right?
yeah,
That's the main thing. It's not like it's only this and I'm not going to look at any science. It's like, really, that's the point of science, is to look at these things.
yeah,
So for scientists to say, we're not even going to go there,
yeah.
you know, at
Right.
the same time, you know, there's a lot of science, a lot of like elementary science that you can do to prove that the earth is round, you know. So it's like, well,
It is.
I
It's
don't
amazing that it is a thing in this age. Uh, it could be. I mean, it could be. I'm just saying. I don't know. I don't
know.
really want to get into it, but I'm saying. I mean, I cannot prove either way, so I'm just gonna stay out of it. Yeah, and I don't want I don't want the stamp of like, you know, nut job like my forehead, you know. But you got to admit the reaction that it brings up is pretty amazing. Like
And that's
mentioning
what
it,
happened last night,
fireworks.
because this one guy brought it up. He's the one I first started talking to there. Uh, and man, he is a warrior. He is something else. Like he has some real potency.
Mm,
He would make an amazing preacher.
mm,
He kind of already is. Like he was preaching last night. He believes in God. Like he believes in the Bible. Like very um not that he's like dogmatic about that, because he's super open to everything I'm saying. But he's like he's just able to go he was like taking on like 6 opponents at once who were all just like, no, no, bogus, bogus. And he's like, it's like it's reminding me of my guru. Like he can do the same thing. Like a room full of people can be giving him like arguments and stuff, and he'll just like fight them all up.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, everyone was just like, not exactly everyone. People were like, all right, like let him speak, like let's hear, you know. So anyway, it was lively. Like we stayed a little bit later than we had to, just because we were having such a lively discussion.
Yeah.
We're talking about the different planetary systems. That's how we got into it, probably. But
Yeah.
anyway, today we're going to be reading a little bit about material science.
Yeah.
So it ties in.
Yeah.
Just as far as like paradigms, you know, what what is the nature of these material energies, you know, like gravity, like all these things we just kind of take for granted as being laws of nature, but a lot of this stuff scientists aren't able to explain. Like they can't explain why is there gravity or really how it works. They just know that it does tend to work. There's times when it doesn't work. What do you do about that? So this isn't going to get that deep into it, but these problems are all resolved in the scriptures. And interestingly enough, I don't think we got into this last weekend, but John of Apria and I had incredible, just hours and hours and hours of conversation last weekend. And he was saying very interestingly that the science in the last 3 decades has opened up whole new worlds of understanding the scripture. Like we can decipher deeper levels of meaning that we were never able to access. And so there's actually a Christian scholar who has put forward this information as far as like the nature of the, you know, how do you say, primeval cultures of, you know, the Bible. And because we didn't know anything about them. So we're trying to understand these texts, these ancient texts, barely knowing the language, right? And not knowing at all the context in which it was written. Like, what was the culture? What was their belief system? What would they be writing about? How would they be trying to, like, what are they trying to explain? How are they trying to explain it?
Yeah.
We didn't really know that. So the translations, you know, literal translations don't get you very far. That's why this book here is so amazing, because not only do we have very clear definitions for the original text, like if we just open up the Srimad Bhagavatam, right, you have the Sanskrit, the English translator, Sanskrit, English transliteration, word for word meaning, translation, commentary. You have so many layers to remove any speculation. You know, so the original Sanskrit and its word for word translations are very authoritative. Scholars agree that Swami Prabhupada has the authoritative edge, if you will, that it's like right on point. Of course, yeah, and then the translations, the verses, he is building the translations and the commentary off of generations going back to the time when it was originally written. The original author, Vyasadeva, directly passed the Bhagavatam down to through his disciples, and the meaning was conveyed. It's not like Vyasadeva wrote this book it was buried in some cave for 5,000 years, and then we just found it, and we're like, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. No. The meaning has been passed down. Right. So we have this book. Is this sound like crackling and all? Apologize if it
No,
is.
it sounds good
So,
actually. Coming
okay.
in loud and clear.
Nice and crisp. Okay.
Yeah, crisp.
So the Krishna book is the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is a summary study. So Prabhupada has essentially combined
Oh,
the verse translations from his guru and the commentaries of all the acharyas to synthesize this paragraph format understanding
yes.
of the meaning in these texts. So it's, but even this, there's things in this book things that modern science could not explain 50 years ago, which now we can. Like the Vimanas, right? The ships that different personalities would have. Like we're gonna read about Jarasandha. He had a ship that was like a whole city, size of a city.
Yeah.
But externally, you look at these ships and they'd be actually the Vikings too. Jonathan was saying that like the same things written in Viking lore, that they would have these ships that on the outside would just be like the size of a boat, like 40 feet by 15 by 15, whatever. But on the inside, there could be 10,000 soldiers in it,
Yeah.
and then you tell that, to someone and it's like, oh, it's just, mythology. They just make these stories up because you can't explain that. Like it's obviously contradicting all laws of physics, but not all laws of physics because law of relativity allows for the bending of space-time.
And now we know that,
And
now
now we know that. That's a fact.
we're in this day and age of technology,
Yeah.
and it's kind of weird because we all think that we're so much smarter than our ancestors, but really we're not. We're actually dumber than our ancestors. And it seems like the further you go back, the smarter people are. Really, I mean, that's the honest truth. Now, I just wanted to put this in here real quick. That new movie about Dr. Oppenheimer, the guy
Okay.
that, yeah. So I've been seeing little blurbs about this here and there and everywhere, and I have been told don't even bother with that movie. And this is not a movie review show by any means, but I just heard that just go right over that one. I know that Oppenheimer was known for quoting the Bhagavad Gita, and so there was like a little blurb about how I think his name is. It looks like it should be Cillian, but it's Killian is the actor's name. He put a little thing that he had read the book, and I've seen him in other movies. And anyway, this is not a show. I'm sorry. I am just trying to just get this out as plainly as I can. Um, yeah, I guess
Because Oppenheimer read Bhagavad Gita,
yeah, so
right?
the actor that plays him read it too, and he said, "Oh, it was a great book and it really helped him." However, in the movie, I guess there was a big uproar because they have like basically like a sex scene like meshed in with the reading of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's like super offensive, super offensive. That's what I heard. That's what I read in the from a article from the Indian newspaper. There's an Indian newspaper. I actually read
Yeah.
several Indian newspapers, and I can't.
It's like you're gonna do a movie on this guy, historic personality, and like the most historic moment of his life
Yeah,
is related to a holy book,
yeah,
and you're just not gonna present that honestly.
I,
That's not.
I,
I mean, that's par for the course, but
yeah.
still.
I mean, we've known for years that Hollywood really cannot do anything right. I've been convinced of that for 30 plus years now. It's always independent filmmakers and independent film that does anything correct. And usually it's like documentaries or art house films, and they have like a tiny little budget, and yet they seem to always be able to convey the best stories, the best themes, the best documentaries on like a tiny budget. And all of these great films, these independent films, get like swept under the rug somehow because of like the money and the power involved with Hollywood, I suppose, you know. I guess that actually um Atlanta, Georgia, believe it or not, is like becoming the new Hollywood. It's like super. There's like they're making tons of films there, and they're thinking that the whole thing might shift out of California to the East Coast actually. So that I don't know what that has to do with what we're talking about, but I'm working with a guy from Georgia, and that's what he was saying. He just moved up here from Atlanta to be with his family, and he's working here as well. So, and that's what he was saying, that it's like all movie studios, they're like buying up lots all over Atlanta, Georgia. Now, apparently, it's been that like that for like the last 10 years or so, you know. So, sorry, squirreling out, as they say.
The more you know.
We should have our own thing. We should not say squirrel. We should say something else like raccoon or something like that. Stray
Well,
cat,
rabbit hole, I think, is
rabbit holing. Yes, rabbit, wild rabbit. I don't know. Anyway, let's start reading. Okay, here I'll bring up the screen share again, and we can start reading
yeah.
the Holy Scriptures. Here we go. Share. Thank you, computer. Oh, now, do you want to read or do you want me to read?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
This material world is composed of five principal elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and all such elements are emanations from Krishna. The material scientists accept these five primary elements as the cause of the material manifestation, but the elements in their gross and subtle states are produced by Krishna. So, just real quick, because you can read that and be like, what? Thought, scientists worked with the periodic table of elements. One way to understand this is that these five elements are also like five states of matter. You have solid, liquid, fire, gas, and in space. Ether is space, right? So, yeah, they also correspond with the five objects of the senses. So, earth corresponds with smell, water, taste, fire, sight, light, right? Air, touch, and ether, sound. And each one is progressively more subtle. So ether only corresponds with sound. Only sound travels through ether, whereas air, you have sound and touch. Fire, you have sound, touch, and light. Water, you have all those plus taste. And earth, you have all five senses. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so everything is composed of these things. Okay. The living entities, and then gross and subtle states. So these elements exist in their gross form that we perceive with our five senses, and they're also in an unmanifest. There's also the unmanifest material energy, right? That's a very interesting thing as well. That's something that I'm gonna just keep as a teaser for now, because I have a feeling that John Priya is gonna come back at some point with some very interesting things to talk about as far as antimatter. Scientists are like totally puzzled about that. And Jonathan has a very interesting solution to that.
Wow.
That could be, I mean, if he's right, which I think he is spot on, because it's like, what else would it be? What else would it be but the next dimension up from us? And we know what that is. This book tells us exactly what it is, but scientists can't account for the other 95% of the universe. And they know that it's influencing, that like gravity is leaking through into the gross cosmic manifestation from this antimatter, or what is it, dark energy, dark matter,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
95% is dark energy, dark matter.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't know what it is, but we know it's like moving things, because they're things, objects, satellites or whatever. They're not like the not satellites, the missions that go like projecting out of the solar system. They're not moving in Euclidean projections or vectors. You know, they should just move in a straight line, but they don't. It's like, well, what's going on there? Outside of gravity. So there's another force acting on it. So we think we know what that is, but we're gonna hold off on that for now.
We're gonna start building spaceships. We're gonna start building spaceships. Yeah, that's gonna be our next thing.
We're gonna start a GoFundMe.
Yes, yes. Wouldn't that be cool? Gonna
We'll
build
match
a
up to the
machine.
first $15, but we need about 10 million. So
I'm gonna build a time machine in my bathroom. Woo! Anyway, yes, continue.
okay, so gross and subtle states, all of it is emanating from Krishna. And this is the point. It's we're seeing just the material gross manifestation, and we're seeing traces of the subtle manifestation. You know, that there's something more subtle than what our senses can detect that is influencing everything on the macrocosmic scale, and thus definitely on the microcosmic scale. But this is saying that all of that is just the material energy, and that beyond that there's a superior energy. So Prabhupada will explain. The living entities who are working within this material world are products of his marginal potency. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that the whole manifestation is a combination of two kinds of energies of Krishna, the superior energy and the inferior energy. The living entities are the superior energy, and the dead material elements are his inferior energy. In its dormant state, everything remains in Krishna. So modern science is looking for the answers in just the dead matter without acknowledgement of the soul, because they think, well, we have to be able to prove everything without a soul. Actually, this is kind of what we would call demoniac or atheistic. It's not how it always was. Actually, science originally was purely theistic. This is what John McCrea was saying. It was scientists were doing science for the glorification of God. So they understood that to see God in the universe is to glorify him. You know, it's all his glory.
Yeah.
So it was very much seeing God in the world, whereas now it's become totally the opposite of like, how can we get rid of or eliminates the
Yeah.
need for God,
Yeah.
right?
It's just so
And then
strange.
provide atheistic, naturalistic, evolutionary
Yeah.
explanations for how everything came to be.
I know. I don't understand why you want to disprove the existence of God. What's in it for you to disprove God? You know?
Well, what's in it is it gives you an excuse to no longer believe in, honor, and obey God. It gives you a perfect excuse. If you can prove that, like, hey, we just figured it out. Actually, turns out everyone was wrong. There is no God. And it's like, you can do whatever you want, actually. There's no consequences. There's no moral consequences. You should probably be a good person, but you don't actually need to. And as far as those holy books, quote unquote, there's nothing holy, you know, there's nothing sacred. Just see, we can make movies and push things that are abominable in the eyes of those religionists, and nothing happens. We're getting away with it. It's like, okay, just wait.
Yeah.
But just see what's happening. What is the advancement of science doing? And scientists know this. Actually, most scientists, this is another point that John Dupree is very very passionate about, is that most Nobel Prize winners are believers. They're not doing it to disprove God. Like a lot of them, they understand there's God, and they readily acknowledge, like, hey, we're doing the science end, but this doesn't cover um our how do you say, like, liability for the repercussions of this. There needs to be a moral compass, and that's actually more important than science, is
Mm.
establishing a moral compass of society. Because if we don't have that, you know, you're producing these tools that can be used as weapons.
Yeah.
You know, any scientific advancement, any technological advancement, if given to an immoral person, it becomes a weapon.
Yeah.
But if given to a moral person, you know, yeah. It's like there's this devotee I was listening to a Bhagavatam class long while back, who was he he was invited to some convention, and this was actually like at the dawning of the development of the internet. I just remembered. So someone was giving a presentation, if I'm not mistaken, presentation about the internet and all of the potentials of it, these incredible potentials. And maybe it was something else, or maybe it was like some like chemical plant or something. Anyway, developing this technology, and people were asking questions like, "Hey, don't you think it could be used, in the wrong way, like this and that?" And he's like, "Yes, my job is to produce the technology, but the people who are, you know, who are providing the moral compass are those people." And he pointed at the Hare Krishna devotee, but he knew this is a spiritual person. This is a religious, God-minded person. They are as essential as I am in this project.
Hmm.
As essential. You have to have. It's like a body without a head. That's what these books are saying. The Brahmanas are the head of society,
Yeah.
and scientists work in tandem. They, you know, they support and supply for the direction of the Brahmanas. You know, whereas modern science is saying, no, let's eliminate that. Why? It's very simple. This is the demonic tendency. And we're slipping more and more into that hellish kind of reality where we're totally disregarding, you know, law of God,
Yeah.
saying, no, I am God, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I can prove it to you. Not yet, but, I'm going to write you a post-dated check,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to cash it in one of these days. Mark my words.
Yeah.
No.
I know that
So,
Bob Dylan actually got a Nobel Peace Prize. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
Yeah, Bob Dylan got one, and he just all he did was he just accepted it, and he said thank you very much. You know, because he's been such a prolific writer. You know, they call him the voice of a generation and everything. You know, like his writings are part and parcel with American history, really. You know, his writings and songs and poetry and everything that he made into songs. So they gave him a Nobel Peace Prize not that long ago, and he just was like, thank you very much. You know, like apparently he didn't even show up to like accept it. He just was like, thank you, just because he knows that all of this stuff is so surface, like people make such a big deal out of these prizes and names on a plaque and all this stuff. And he just saw right through the whole thing. I mean, he's constantly doing that with everything apparently. And it's just, I don't know, something that I thought of when you were talking, about how like we accept the words of men to be like so great, like, oh, thank you so much for that pat on the back, now I can really go on and continue my career, but when you do that, you start doing that with like people who are actually evil as well, like people with absolutely no moral compass at all, you know oh, thanks. Now I feel a lot better about learning about the science of like genocide or something like that. So he won the prize and he just simply said, hey, thank you for the prize, thanks guys, see you later. So that's kind of sometimes in Krishna conscious we have to be like that too, because we have to say, okay, thank you, I don't agree, but thank you, and then kind of move on from that. That's interesting, that story about how the guy pointed at the devotee. That's very interesting because that's yeah, we're
Yeah,
supposed, we're
this would
supposed,
have been like
yeah.
80s or 90s. What's that?
Oh, just, I like, it just goes to show like Krishna conscious people actually are have somewhat of like a burden, I guess, to like live a certain way and to like, not a burden, I shouldn't say that, but should be known to serve, like should be servants of God and man, really. I mean, that's our number one calling is devotional service. Our service to men is actually service to God. So that was interesting too. But yeah, I just thought of that thing about Bob Dylan while you were talking. So we can start reading again.
No, thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's the consciousness, the consciousness of connection with the spiritual superior energy. If you're just focused on the inferior energy, you know, like what is highly esteemed before men is, the Bible says, abominable before God. So we we can respect that, and be a part of that, be in the world, but not of the world, right? Um, so yeah, at this point, there's a whole other thing, like this article that John was sent me that I'll park as well because we don't need to get into it. But it's just another thing, like these scientists are trying to develop this very controversial technology, and they admit, so I have the quote here. Quote, there are all sorts of gray areas that society really needs to figure out. But we're going to go ahead and push this because I really want this, you
Mm,
know? And it's like, well, what about all these concerns? It's like, yeah, that would really be terrible.
mm,
But the positives will probably outweigh that. It's like, what?
yeah,
It's like it's like that's a total cop out to just say, yeah, society needs to figure out these gray areas, but we're not gonna, like, what? So you have to understand there is a solution to these things. These gray areas can be sorted out. So this is what Prabhupada, and this was like his whole mission. Um, what is it? Namaste Gauravani. No, Namaste. Not Namaste Gauravani. That's Guru's pronoun. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. Paschata Desha Tarine. Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi. Prabhupada was adamantly rejecting, kicking out these atheistic, nihilistic, voidist philosophies.
Yeah.
Say, no, there is no superior energy. It's just whatever we see with our senses. There's no God. Okay, maybe there's some subtle energy. Maybe there's this dark matter that we can't explain, but we don't have to worry about that, like it's like, yeah, the things that we're doing have incredible ethical concerns that could destroy the planet, but come on, like what?
Yeah.
No, we have to totally uproot this. This is destroying everything.
Yeah.
And the solution is here. And it's not just some woo-woo, dogmatic stuff. It's science. This is also science.
Yeah.
So we need to understand the science. And so the next paragraph, we'll segue right in, is the demigods are in their prayers, they're acknowledging this. They're acknowledging this very, very important philosophy of understanding the relationship between science and religion, understanding this world through the lens of theology, really. All right. Would you like to read?
Yeah, I'll read it. The demigods continued to offer their respectful prayers unto the supreme form of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, by analytical study of the material manifestation. What is the material manifestation? It is just like a tree. A tree stands on the ground. Similarly, the tree of the material manifestation is standing on the ground of material nature. So this is kind of like in the spirit world kind of a deal here. This material manifestation is compared to a tree because a tree is ultimately cut off in due course of time. A tree is called vriksha, means that nothing which will be ultimately cut off. Therefore,
that was a period there. It's not vriksha. It's vriksha.
Friksha.
Vriksha means that thing. That's interesting. I didn't know that because vriksha is common word used for tree, like kalpa vriksha.
Yeah.
Also taru. Taru is another word for tree, but vriksha means that thing which will ultimately be cut off. So, have either of you been doing your Purushottam month vrata of reading a certain chapter of Bhagavad Gita?
I have actually. I've been doing the lamp too, saying prayers.
Lamp? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been reading chapter 15?
No.
Okay. So it's recommended in this month, in this lunar month, to read the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And the first few verses are exactly what Srila Prabhupada is referencing here. He's directly referencing the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which I'll just read the first verse because it's the second one. The Supreme Personality of God had said, "It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruit of actions of human society. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that supreme personality of Godhead, from whom everything began, and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial.
Mm.
Very interesting. So the banyan tree, right? For those of you who aren't familiar with banyan trees, the branches also have roots that come down that just kind of dangle for however long until they finally reach the earth, and then they become another root system. So like the largest banyan tree in the world is like miles wide. It's like one tree, but it's a whole forest, right? It's one organism, but it's a whole forest. It's considered the world tree, and okay, no, there's a rabbit that was going by. I'm just gonna ignore it. So it has roots going upward and downward, branches upward and downward, and this tree is a reflection of the spiritual worlds, right? So there is a spiritual world, which shaped like a tree, and so an interesting idea is that the structure of the universe, we think of the structure of the universe as an open box, right? It's just like Big Bang, everything's expanding, going in random directions, and it's organized by space. Whereas from a higher dimension, everything is seen to be organized semantically. Is that so? Like by ideas. Like this is how a computer would organize it, is a tree structure. So in computer programming, right, you can organize things just like a random list. You just like put up just a block of information and you have to scroll through line by line to find it. It's very inefficient to locate data that way. But you can also organize it in a tree structure. So that way, in order to find, it's like if you just pick a random letter in the alphabet and you ask a child to find it, is it in the first half of the alphabet or the second half of the alphabet? This is just a crude example, but
Yeah.
you split it in half and say, no, it's in the first half. Okay, is it between A through F or F through M, whatever? Okay, it's between these. Okay, now is it here? So that way, instead of going through 26 letters, processing each letter is yes, no, no, yes. You just process like 4 letters and you find it. Does that make sense? So it's a much more efficient way to organize information. So the universe is also organized this way. And actually, we're understanding, and most people know this by now. We see pictures, on social media. These pictures of the universe, if you zoom way, 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 way out, it's organized the same way that a dendritic structure is organized, right? So like a tree, the human brain, right? The neurons of the brain, it's organized like a tree structure. So the universe as a whole, the clusters of galaxies and everything, it's organized like a brain. And we say, yeah, that's Brahma. And Brahma, his body is composed of intelligence, and his intelligence structures the whole universe.
Yeah.
So that is
Brahma.
material. Yeah, Brahma.
Brahma.
So that's material world. It's a tree structure of information. So Brahma is at the root of that tree. And this is the understanding. Our teachers in Mayapur, when we dug into this chapter, they're explaining that the branches are different fields of activity because they're different planes of planetary systems. So you have Brahma's planetary system is the root, and then you have all of these planetary systems to Earth, which is where the field of activities allow you to grow roots upward or downward. Right. And then those roots it's your karma, whatever activity you do, you're basically taking a fruit off of that tree, eating that fruit, and that seed is then growing roots. in either lower planetary systems or higher planetary systems, what happens? You are spellbound in a sense to those, like you are getting more entangled. That binding tree is growing and you're just getting enmeshed in a forest. You know, like that scene in Harry Potter, right? They like fall through that trap door and like there's those vines and they're just like binding and
Yeah,
Ron is just like totally losing his cool.
guess what? You're
That's
the
us.
only millennial here, so we have no idea what you're talking about.
No, stop. Yeah.
Sorry, we don't watch Harry Potter. We're 40 and over here.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. What are you doing? But seriously, no, I've
So,
never seen that.
great analogy though. Really good analogy. So that's our position is we're getting totally bound up. And you know, the teaching is right there. If you just relax, if you just let go. And Ron's like, no way, no, it's gonna eat me. No, just let go. And you'll just slip right out. So that's it. What did Krishna say? With the weapon of detachment, one must cut this strongly rooted tree at the root. Right. So yeah, then the twigs are the objects of the senses. So like the soul is like surrounded by these five objects of the senses, which we described previous paragraph. I want to partake of that. Krishna saying, don't get fooled. This is the inferior energy. You belong to the superior energy. Like variegatedness of enjoyment is there. The same variety of all these different branches and things that's also there, but it's in a pure form that doesn't entangle you. You go on enjoying and exploring eternally without limit. Whereas here, the more that you enjoy, the more that you get bound, the more birth and death you have to experience. And along with that, there's going to be disease, there's going to be old age, there's going to be suffering, there's going to be heartbreak, and so much. But you say, no, no, I just need to try to enjoy a little bit more. And death, what? Well, that's not a very good philosophy because you're an eternal being, you're seeking eternal pleasure, and you're not solving that problem. So this is the understanding um, how far we got into this paragraph. But yeah, it's ultimately cut off in due course of time. You know, this tree is temporary.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, you will be forced to detach from the objects of the senses.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're at therefore.
Yeah.
See it?
Yes. Therefore,
Right in the, yeah.
Therefore, this tree of the material manifestation cannot be accepted as the ultimate truth because it is influenced by time. But Krishna's body is eternal. He existed before the material manifestation. He is existing while the material manifestation is continuing. And when it will be dissolved, he will continue to exist. Therefore, only Krishna can be accepted as absolute truth. Wow. We are getting into some really wild stuff here. Wow.
Yeah.
Wrap your head around eternity. Just take a second and just let that sink in. Wow. That's God, if I've ever heard of God, is always eternal.
Yeah. The demigods they're trying to make it very clear for us, saying, look, none of this stuff exists eternally. But if you go back, you know, a priori to all of this, there was God. God was there, and he's still here. God is not dead. He's existing through all this, and after this is all over, God will be there. That's Krishna, and Krishna makes this very clear in the second chapter. His conversation with Brahma, the original conversation in the universe, he states this directly. So the demigods could be, well, they are echoing effectively. They could be directly referencing this. They might as well be, because that's all of the all knowledge actually stemming from that conversation between Brahma and Krishna. And Krishna tells Brahma, look, this is how it is. Before this, like as far as time and as far as space, I am transcendental. I am existence outside of time and outside of space, be it within this universe and beyond this universe, within time and outside of time. I am there. I will be there. You are all caught up in this time-space tree, but just understand that I am beyond all of this. And that is the ultimate truth. Any other truth, any truth that doesn't recognize that is incomplete at best. But it's just, you're ignorant to the actual truth and nature of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next couple paragraphs are going to continue with this, but we'll have to wait till tomorrow for that.
Yeah, it's I like the concept of like everything in the material universe, even on this plane of existence, is Krishna. That's kind of like, I remember years and years and years ago, my grandfather said that to me, and my grandfather was a very devout Catholic, and he told me, I take the good with the bad. That's how I live my life, you know. So like that's in a sense Krishna consciousness, because we're taking the good and the bad. We're taking the living and the dead together, And by that I mean, events could be living, like, or events could be dead, either something happens or it doesn't happen, um positives and negatives, good karma and bad karma, or what we call bad karma, you know. And yet, while this is happening, this is all by Krishna's design anyway, and we're just kind of like sailing through it. That's so interesting. That's so very, very interesting. I mean, if that doesn't give you direction in your life, I don't know what will. Just knowing that everything that happens to you is part of a plan, it's part of Krishna's plan or God's plan for your life. Even when really bad things happen to you, or even when really good things happen to you, this plane of existence is completely controlled anyway. It's just we have to open our minds and step out of the pains of material world by prayer.
Did you have a chance to check out that video I sent you?
I did not. I did not. I mentioned that right before the show, actually. I am gonna check it out though, because that's probably why was he talking just like that?
It Well, what you're saying reminded me of it, like taking the bad with the good and tying in with theme we've gotten into. This was it's like getting to the root of it, like the essence of what our theology is. And this is so important to understand. We got into this. He was covering a verse actually from this book, like a section that we read in the 18th episode, but in the Bhagavatam itself. So this is again a summary, translation, and commentary by Prabhupada, which was written several years after he wrote the Krishna book. And it goes deep because it's got some of the Acharya's commentary. It was the names of Maya. You remember that? Maya Devi. Krishna is talking to Yogamaya, and he's saying, you will be known as this, Durga, Vajrakali, Vijaya, Vaishnavi, Chandika, Sharda. And at first you're just like, okay, a bunch of names. But Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj went deep into this. And okay, so we're out of time here. So basically, break it down to there's two kinds of religion. You have monotheism and what the Judeo-Christians would call paganism, which is monotheism is worshiping God himself alone, meaning there is God, as we went into here, there's the superior energy, which is God, spirit. There's the inferior energy, which is material world, and then there's the marginal energy, which is also an energy of his, which is us. So monotheism is saying reject the inferior material energy, all the bad, all the evil and sin of this world. You have to totally reject it. Just look at God, only God. And they're afraid to even mention his energies, which is the goddess. So the Lord himself is the masculine aspect of God, and the energies, his energies, are the goddess. And they're persons, they're personifications. Again, it's not like God is just male and everything else, female is therefore inferior or like less than. No, like everything is personality. So it's not a gender thing. These are personalities. So when we think of like male and female, it's like, why is God just male? You don't understand. Like, you can't impose material gender onto God. Anyway, all that aside, there's still this fear of mentioning his energies, be they feminine or whatever, because it's like, thou shalt have no other gods before me. It's like, okay, we don't talk about the goddess here. Even if we know she's real, we're not going to talk about her. There's even a verse apparently in Revelations, I think, that Bhumi is directly mentioned, like the earth goddess, like protected someone. Like it actually says that the goddess of the earth is mentioned in the Bible. Anyway, we're not gonna talk. So there's that. That's one extreme. The other extreme is this paganism, or like the Wicca, which we got into that episode, which is only worshiping God's energy, right? We just talk about the goddess here. We don't talk about that patriarch, guy who's judging everyone. And they sometimes, but usually don't understand the connection that this energy is related to the Godhead. So what happens inevitably on the one hand, you have emphasis on total renunciation. It's like, only you go to church, you don't enjoy anything of this world. No enjoyment here. So that's totally unnatural to us. This is why people are leaving the churches. They just can't do that. There might be enough attraction to the rituals and the culture to keep them coming around, but they're not investing their whole heart in it. And Jesus said, be hot or cold. If you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out. If you're just coming to church just to be there on Sunday, but then you go back Monday through Friday and you act the same way that the rest of the world does, how do you think you're actually going to go to the kingdom of God? There's no way. So, but that's their philosophy, is going that direction. And so that it's a very difficult philosophy to get into. It's unnatural. To everything besides the Lord is completely unworthy of our attention. Well, our attention's still going there. What to do? Well, what to do? You just have to believe, and he'll somehow cleanse your heart at the end of your life. Okay. On the other hand, just looking at the Lord's energies, obviously you're neglecting the Lord. And what happens is there's a very strong tendency to enjoy this world, to totally lose yourself in the material world, and not to try to see the connection with the Lord, who He's the real enjoyer, right? Krishna says, Bhoktaram Yoga Tapasam. I am the Bhoktaram, right? I am the real enjoyer. So his conclusion, and what happens, it's unnatural because that gives rise to all sorts of perversions, right? Our consciousness becomes perverted by trying to enjoy, and Durga punishes us. The energy, you're worshiping the energy, and the energy herself punishes you for worshiping her. It's not because you're worshiping her. And this is the point that Prabhupada makes, is and Bhaktivedanta emphasizes, is Krishna is chanting her names. He's actually in ecstasy chanting the names of his Shakti, his energy. Means, look, she's glorious, she's worthy of worship, but not independently, or else, she'll punish you. It's like the story of Jad Bharat, this devotee, the worshippers of Durga captured him. You heard this? Captured him. They wanted to sacrifice him to Durga, to this effigy, the deity of Durga, as a human sacrifice. They're like, this will please her. Wrong. He serves her husband, her lord and master. So she actually came out of the deity form and cut off all their heads, and then offered respects to Jad Bharat. So this is what's happening. She'll punish, the energy herself will punish you if you just try to enjoy her. So the proper way to worship is to coming back to the point of accepting the good with the bad, with bad with the good, whatever. You can enjoy in this material world. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's restrictions. It's like you're in a prison. There's still going to be some amenities, but you have to understand the nature. It's limited. It's going to be limited. So the material energy is worshipable. It's not that we reject the energy. It's also not that we just completely reject the energetic, the Lord, the source. We have to understand the connection between the energy and the Supreme Lord. Yeah, and so Vaishnava is the real Shakta, the real worshiper of Shakti, because he is trying to connect her with her source, with Krishna. So we are servants of the love between Radha and Krishna. That is the position of the Gaudiya Vaishnava. This is the ideal religious synthesis. Lord and his energy are equal players in their Leela, in their drama. Actually, it's not that Krishna is higher than Radha; they're equal. So where else are you going to find a philosophy like this? So you have to understand the connection. You have to understand everything is relationship. Everything is about relationship. You can't just glide by in this world without that kind of philosophy. Again, have to understand the nature of this material tree, and it's not just a cold renunciation. You have to understand the relationship with Krishna, and that we're serving love that will satisfy your heart. What do you think, Jake?
Yes, absolutely, it will. That is all the time we have today. We will see you next time. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in on our little WhatsApp app. And thank you, all of the viewers. Please like and subscribe, write comments, share with your friends and neighbors. You can be as kooky as we are. You can be, I know, I believe in our audience. They can all be as kooky as us. All right, we love you so much. Hare Krishna, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.
And with our Mahamantras, 3 Mahamantras.
Yes, let's do that. Go ahead and lead us off.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
All right. We love you. Jai Jai Shri Krishna.